What if the entire direction of an entire cinematic universe was never determined by the studio, nor by the fans, nor even by the writers, but by the single ambition of one man who believed he could reshape everything in his image? What if an entire legacy, from Superman to the future of the DC Universe, silently drifted toward a path no one asked for until the moment it all collapsed? There was a plan hidden in plain sight, a slow and calculated rise toward absolute creative control. It was bold, it was aggressive, and for a brief second, it almost succeeded. But something happened behind the cameras, something that not even the most powerful executives anticipated. Deals were made, deals were broken. Promises shifted from whispered agreements to irreversible consequences. And when the final moment arrived, the truth became impossible to hide. The plan to build the DC Universe around Black Adam did not merely fail, it detonated. This is the chain of events that led to that fall. And it all starts long before the DC Universe ever realized it was in danger. The journey began years earlier, long before any executive ever imagined Black Adam standing at the center of the DC Universe. When Dwayne Johnson stepped into Hollywood with his appearance in The Mummy Returns, the room reacted instantly. Casting directors said his presence was so overwhelming that even in a short role, the impact felt permanent. Producers whispered about his potential, insisting that there was something unusually magnetic about the way he carried himself. Studio marketers pointed at early crowd reactions and said the same words repeatedly. This man is not just an actor, he is a brand waiting to happen. As The Scorpion King released and exceeded performance expectations for its scale, executives said that Johnson had something most rising stars lacked, an early understanding of how to market himself. Co-stars recalled how he remained calm when critics questioned his acting range, focusing instead on discipline, consistency, and audience connection. Casting agents explained that Johnson was selective even then, carefully choosing roles that amplified his physical presence while slowly evolving his public persona. Yet behind the scenes, something complex was happening. Although Johnson appeared unstoppable, his early titles, The Rundown, Walking Tall, and Doom, did not explode at the box office. Studio insiders reportedly said that Johnson was a guaranteed draw, but not a guaranteed hit. Marketing teams argued that he needed a defining role, a character that could elevate him from reliable action star into the upper ranks of Hollywood. Directors who worked with him said he showed intense charisma, strong work ethic, and a willingness to commit fully, but without the right projects, the industry would continue viewing him as second tier. During this period, Johnson strategically accepted supporting roles in ensemble films like Be Cool and Get Smart. People close to the productions claimed he did this intentionally, attempting to show studios that he could play comedic roles, secondary roles, and even self-parody. They said this was his way of building credibility before demanding lead status again. And it was during Get Smart that everything shifted. Director Peter Sagal approached Johnson with an idea that would change the course of his entire career. He asked him about playing Shazam. But once Johnson studied the material, he noticed something more compelling. Those who were with him during the early discussions said he pointed immediately to the character of Black Adam and explained that this figure, with his unpredictable morality and powerful presence, aligned far more closely with the persona that made him a global star in wrestling. From that moment, Johnson believed Black Adam was not just a character, he was a destiny. Nearly 10 years later, the project resurfaced, and by this time, Johnson was one of the most bankable actors in the world. Executives approached him with a script that combined the origins of Shazam and Black Adam into a single film. Studio leaders said that the script worked well. Writers claimed the shared narrative felt natural. Marketing teams believed promoting both characters together would be more cost-effective. But Johnson and his inner circle saw something very different. Members of his team reportedly said that Johnson studied every page and concluded that Black Adam would be overshadowed, even in his own introduction. Those close to the negotiations said Johnson insisted that the character required a darker tone, a harsher world, and a more violent introduction. And he warned the studio that pairing the character with Shazam, whose tone leaned toward comedy and family-friendly storytelling, would dilute everything that made Black Adam interesting. People in the room said that Johnson argued passionately that each character deserved their own movie. He said Shazam should remain light, humorous, and fantastical. He said Black Adam should embrace brutality, moral ambiguity, and a serious tone. He insisted that trying to combine the two would diminish both. The studio hesitated. They believed a shared launch would save money and simplify the universe. But after seeing Johnson's rising power and global influence, they eventually relented. Shazam released first. It became a hit and sparked widespread excitement about the future of the DC Universe. But instead of strengthening ties, the film exposed the lack of coordination within the studio. The original plan called for a cameo by Superman. The scene would have shown Superman sitting with Shazam and Freddy at a school cafeteria table, offering guidance and confirming that these stories existed in one unified world. However, when negotiations began, tension surfaced. Zachary Levi later said publicly that the production team tried repeatedly to secure Cavill but failed. Sources close to Cavill said his agent, Danny Garcia, felt the offer was too low. Others believed the refusal was part of a larger strategy meant to strengthen Cavill's position for a new Superman contract. Executives countered by saying that Cavill was not fully available, creating delay after delay until the cameo could no longer be filmed. The result was an awkward scene where Superman appeared only from the neck down, portrayed by a stunt double. Crew members said privately they were embarrassed by how cheap it looked. Critics described it as evidence of a studio without a unified vision. Industry insiders compared it to Marvel's early commitment to seamless world building, pointing out how Robert Downey Jr. personally filmed a cameo in The Incredible Hulk because the studio insisted on consistency. Instead of excitement, this cameo caused friction between Cavill, Garcia, and Warner Brothers. And that fracture would soon become one of the key triggers in the collapse that followed.
As the years unfolded, the cracks within the DC cinematic universe widened. Insiders described the atmosphere inside Warner Brothers as unstable, with different creative factions pulling in different directions. After Zack Snyder departed Justice League, the studio entered a state that former employees later referred to as directional drift. Executives debated whether the universe should maintain Snyder's darker tone, chase Marvel's family-friendly formula, or attempt something entirely new. Filmmakers spoke privately about inconsistent notes, shifting priorities, and sudden rewrites ordered without clear explanation. Walter Hamada entered during this turbulence, hired specifically to stop the bleeding. He arrived with a reputation for efficiency, discipline, and commercial instinct, having shepherded successful horror franchises like It and The Conjuring. When he examined the DC slate, he reportedly said that the universe lacked a spine. He pushed to diversify creative voices, reduce production costs, and stabilize a brand that had been shaken by internal conflict. But even with his new leadership, the damage already ran deep. Aquaman became a massive success, yet even that victory created problems. Different executives believed that its billion-dollar success justified more fantastical films, while others argued that it was an exception that could not be replicated. Wonder Woman 1984 underperformed. Birds of Prey struggled. The Suicide Squad reboot delivered critical praise, but disappointing financial results. Each failure further eroded confidence inside the studio. Directors said they felt trapped between conflicting mandates. Writers were asked to plan for long-term world building, then told that continuity did not matter. Actors found their contracts uncertain, unsure whether to commit to future roles. Cavill, Ezra Miller, Gal Gadot, and others all lingered in a strange limbo as new executives debated how to salvage the universe. Into this state of disarray stepped Black Adam. The film was completed, edited, and screened internally, and the reaction was devastating. Test audiences scored the movie shockingly low, with some reactions mirroring the feedback that doomed Batgirl. When the executives revealed to Walter Hamada, right there at the screening, that Batgirl had been canceled for a tax write-off, shock rippled through the room. People who were present said Hamada's expression hardened, as though a line had been crossed. For him, the decision represented a breach of trust. He reportedly considered resigning immediately, but after discussions, he agreed to remain through the release of Black Adam. Inside the studio, the mood became tense. Executives whispered about the canceled film. Producers questioned how a movie could be shot, edited, approved, and still be erased overnight. The cancellation became a symbol of how chaotic and unpredictable DC had become. And into that instability, Dwayne Johnson saw an opening that would soon define everything that followed. After the disastrous test screening, Warner Brothers made a decision that would set off a chain reaction. They ordered an extremely expensive 20-day reshoot period for Black Adam. Crew members later said the mood on set was tense. Cinematographers felt pressure to deliver darker tones. Editors worked around the clock, attempting to restructure action sequences and emotional beats. Producers said they were told to elevate the film at all costs, a directive that ballooned the budget from a large $190 million to an enormous $260 million. Every extra dollar spent increased the pressure for the movie to become a hit. Originally, the post-credits scene was simple. Shazam would appear, recruited by Hawkman into the Justice Society of America. It was a natural setup, tying the two characters back together for an eventual showdown rooted in their shared comic history. But at this precise moment, the internal structure of DC Films was collapsing. Walter Hamada was preparing his departure. Executives were uncertain about long-term planning. The future of the universe was unclear, and Dwayne Johnson recognized an opportunity. People who worked closely with him said he began to push forcefully for a new direction. He approached Hamada with a pitch: replace Shazam in the post-credit scene with Superman. He laid out a multi-film plan in which Black Adam and Superman would exist in a slow-burn rivalry. One film would escalate tension, another would expand the conflict, and then, eventually, it would culminate in a massive tentpole event where the two characters would battle at the center of the franchise. Hamada listened but declined. He already had an entirely different vision in motion. He planned a Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline. The Flash movie was built to establish the multiverse. Michael Keaton's Batman would return. Supergirl would take a central role. And in this broader blueprint, Black Adam was a supporting figure, not the central force Johnson wanted him to be. According to insiders, Johnson was stunned. He believed that his star power and global influence would secure approval, but Hamada refused, and that refusal marked the moment Johnson changed course. Instead of accepting the decision, he bypassed Hamada entirely and pitched the same idea directly to Warner Brothers executives above him. The studio, exhausted by internal instability and desperate for positive headlines, agreed. They authorized the Superman cameo behind Hamada's back. This move would become the single most pivotal moment in the unraveling of the DC cinematic universe. Securing the Superman cameo required navigating a labyrinth of contracts, timing constraints, and personal relationships. Cavill did not currently have an active multi-film deal. He only had one remaining appearance tied to the long-delayed Man of Steel 2. But his status had been uncertain for years, floating between potential returns and rumored replacements. Danny Garcia, who managed both Cavill and Johnson, now held enormous leverage. Her team told DC that Cavill wanted a renewed future as Superman. Warner Brothers, anxious for good publicity, was willing to provide a verbal commitment even without a finalized contract. Cavill was paid $250,000 for the cameo, a number that seemed small given the enormous significance it carried. During this period, Cavill left The Witcher, and although later reports clarified that deep creative disagreements drove the decision, public speculation erupted. Many believed the Superman return caused the departure. The timing created a narrative that Cavill was rearranging his career around the Man of Steel's comeback. The cameo was originally meant to be a surprise, a shocking moment that would ignite excitement across the fanbase. But as Black Adam's pre-release tracking numbers suggested only modest box office potential, Johnson began hinting at the cameo before the movie even opened. He appeared in interviews and cryptic social media posts. He used phrases that teased hope, revival, and destiny. Fans interpreted these messages as confirmation that Superman was returning. What should have been a jaw-dropping reveal became an openly discussed expectation. Insiders said this strategy alarmed some executives. They felt the marketing push was built around a moment that was meant to be protected. But Johnson believed revealing Cavill early would boost ticket sales, and without a runaway financial success, the entire plan to build the universe around Black Adam could not move forward. Meanwhile, Johnson's decisions were creating tension elsewhere. Shazam's sequel required post-credit world-building. The studio planned to connect Shazam to Black Adam again, but Johnson blocked it. He refused to allow Black Adam characters to appear in Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Crew members said this forced the studio to scramble for replacements, resulting in last-minute cameos from Peacemaker characters that felt disconnected from the film's tone and story. The shared universe was bending unnaturally around one actor's vision, and instead of strengthening the franchise, the changes weakened both films. When Black Adam opened, it failed to justify the enormous buildup. Critics were split, audiences were lukewarm, ticket sales stalled. The movie underperformed financially, leaving the ambitious multi-film plan with no foundation. And the impact would only grow worse from here.